Hello class, in this demonstration we're going to create our first objects within Illustrator. So I'm here back at the home screen. Starting off, if you don't have a document open, I'm going to go ahead and recreate one. If you already have your document from the previous video, continue with that one and give me a moment to bring everyone up to task. So within the home screen here, I'm going to go ahead and I want to create a document. I'm going to click on these more presets because it's going to bring open this new document window. And you might already have a letter right here, but if you don't have a letter under the recent, I'm going to go ahead and switch to print. I'm going to select letter over here on the far left, but I am going to change my unit of measure over here found on the right from points to inches. I'm going to change my orientation from portrait to landscape, and I'm going to go ahead and tell it to create. So what I'm going to be doing, I want to make sure that my interface is also set up correctly. I'm going to go ahead and change from automation, from printing and proofing to Essential Classics. And I do want to make sure that just going to tell it to reset it just to make sure that everything is there. So what we have in the center is our artboard. And we're going to create our first couple of shapes. I want to remind you that my toolbar over here, I have it displayed across two columns, but if you click on these little double arrows, it could switch from 1 to 2. And the reason I have 2 is simply because my resolution does not allow me to display all my columns, all my tools along one column. So what I want to point out is first thing we want to do is we want to change our colors. If you notice right here under the what's called my fill and stroke, in Photoshop this was our foreground and background color. I want to change these two, or specifically the white for the fill. Because our artboard has white, white on white is hard to see. To change this color, I'm going to go ahead, if I just click on this right here, it's selecting it, meaning, for example, if I click on the stroke, it brings that forward. If I click on my fill, it brings the fill forward. I want to be able to select the fill, and if I double click on it, click, it brings up the color picker. The first thing I want to do is I want to change my hue. I want to select a blue color, kind of like a sky blue. But now I want, since I'm here, notice on the top left-hand corner, this is where my cursor is at. I could just click anywhere along this area and it's going to show me the color. Up here in this top center on the right side shows me the color that I'm going to be selecting. This is my previous color. Now I just want to point out that notice how there's this little exclamation point, this little warning. This little warning says that it's out of Gamut, meaning that if we were trying to produce this color, if we were trying to print this out, this is a color that your printer cannot reproduce. Your screen, no problem. So in this case, since I'm working on my screen, this is not something that I need to worry about, but it is something that it's trying to warn you about. So I'm going to go ahead and tell it OK. And now notice that my color here, it has this blue color for the fill, and the stroke color has black. But what do those mean? Well, we're gonna do this. We're gonna go over a couple of shapes. What I want you to do is I want to select the shape tool. Typically, it's a rectangle tool that's right here. So it's this tool right here. I want to click and hold down my left mouse button. I want to point out that before I do that, notice on the bottom right hand corner there's this little triangle. This represents that there are more tools hidden underneath this icon. So if I click and hold down my mouse button, you can see that I could see all these different tools. We have the rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, and flare tool. So I want to go over these top 5 in one video, or maybe a series of videos. We'll see how long this one goes. But also I want to point out, you see over here on the far right, we have this little bar. I want to click on this bar. This allows us to rip this menu item off, and we have access to all those tools. So I want to start off working with the rectangle tool. To create a shape, option 1 is you just click anywhere on your entire document. It could be within your artboard or not. I'll show you that in a moment. I'm just going to click. We get this window right here asking us specifically what type of size do we want to create our shape. So with this one, for example, what if I want the width to be 4 inches and the height to only be 2 inches? I'm going to tell it OK, and it creates my shape. More in a moment, we're going to go over these options on how to manipulate this shape. So another option is anywhere, if you move your cursor anywhere along your document, if you click and hold down the left mouse button, and now if you drag, you can either drag to the bottom right, bottom left, or top right. That area, it's showing you the shape that you're going to create. Now I want to point out, you see these magenta lines that are displaying on my screen? These are the smart guides. So the smart guides, for me, they were turned on. I'll show you in a moment how to turn them on. What they help you is they help you to create specific shapes. Say, for example, if I leave this right here, this is going to create a square. But once I go right here, this is creating a rectangle. Notice that sometimes your smart guides will also line up with other objects. So right now I don't necessarily need to create a specific shape, but you can see that smart guides will give you some of that functionality, being able to line them up and create different shapes. Once you let go of the mouse button, it's going to create your shape. Now what I want to do, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to press Command or Control plus. Command for Mac, Control for a PC. What I want to do now, I'm going to switch my tool. This was the rectangle tool. I want to switch to a selection tool. Notice on Illustrator you have two different selection tools. You have the black arrowhead, which is a selection tool, and then you have the white arrowhead, which is the direct selection tool. We're going to go over the direct selection tool in a future class session, but for right now I want to focus on the selection tool, the black arrowhead. So with this tool selected, and also a keyboard shortcut, it's V on your keyboard, V for Victor. With this tool selected, notice that your object, now this might be a little bit difficult to see your actual what's called the wireframe, simply because the color that I chose for this object is blue. Let me go ahead and change that right now. Another way of being able to change the color is that if we deselect, to deselect, you can either select anywhere in the background so that this shape is no longer selected. You can see that it's not selected. Let me show you where the smart guides are at. Let's go under View, and you notice under View there's Smart Guides. The keyboard shortcut is Command or Control U. I like to say the idea is like, who's in command? Are you in command? Or who's in control? Are you in control? Or there are smart guides in control? Well, the smart guides are really handy. I kind of think of them kind of like training wheels on a bicycle. They're really helpful when you're getting learning how to start off, but once you get more proficient, they can get in the way. But the good thing is you could always turn them on. Right now I want them on. So notice that as we hover over, your wireframe kind of highlights. Once we click on it, it selects. I want to change the color. Let me go ahead and show you a different way to change the color instead of going here to the fill and the stroke value. You could always use the color right here. What you also have access to are swatches. So say, for example, my fill color is selected, and maybe I want this CMYK magenta. So that is selected. If I want to change the stroke value, this color, I could click on this one and say maybe I want this one to be orange. Oh, those are too similar. Let's go ahead and select green. Do I want yellow? Yeah, maybe yellow, simply so that we could create that contrast. Maybe I don't want that magenta. Maybe I want yellow on this one. But you can see how you're able to change this color to whatever you want. I want a lighter color. There, something that's too similar. I'll go with this green. You could change these different colors. Another option is in your control bar up here. You're also able to change the fill color. So say maybe I don't want that green. Maybe I want this sandy brown color. Maybe I don't want yellow for the stroke. I want to, maybe I do want red. If I deselect, you can see that we have our shape. I'm going to go ahead and select it. You could always change the stroke value as well. Right now it's set to 1 point. I'm going to go ahead and increase this, or I could decrease it. Now I want to also go over a couple of things that you're able to do with your different shapes. Using my selection tool, notice that we have, it looks like a bounding box around it. What you're able to do, you are able to resize your shape. I am able to click on one of these sides and scrunch it down. If I click on one of these corners, I'm able to change both the two sides for that one. Also, what you're able to do is, if you notice in the center, or not center, on the corners, there's these little circles. If I click and drag on them, you could change your square into a rounded rectangle. Now, right here, since I clicked and dragged one, it's dragging all of them. I'm going to drag this all the way to the top corner to give me a corner point. If I only want to control one, I click on one first, click, and now I click and drag so that this one is isolated. If I want to move two of them, I click on one, click, hold down Shift, click on the next one, click, and then drag. Oh, hold on, that didn't work. Click on one, click on the other one, and now I drag them. There you go. We're able to move only two of them. So maybe I want these to be a little bit rounded, but still kind of squared. And now we have this shape. What you're always able to do, you're able to resize these. If you want to keep the proportion, hold down Shift, and as you scale them up, it's always keeping the proportion. If you want to scale from the center, hold down on a Mac, Option, on a PC, Alt, and it scales from the center. You could hold down Shift and Alt or Option so that you keep the proportion, but you're scaling from the center. So all these different tools that we've gone over are available for your other objects as well. So what I want you to do, instead of going over each individual object, go ahead and just experiment with these different shapes. Notice that since the color that I had previously selected for the fill and stroke, those colors carry on to my next object. So right here is my rounded rectangle. If I just click on it, I also have the options. Say for example the width. I want this one should be 3 by 3 with a corner of radius of 0.25 inches. Create. I'm command minusing or command plusing to zoom in, or control minus control plus on a PC. If I want to move this one, here's a new keyboard shortcut. If you press and hold down Command on your Mac or Control on your PC, notice that it takes you to the last used selection tool. My last used selection tool was the direct selection tool. So this is a quick way of being able to switch from one tool to one of your selection tools. I want to click on this one and move it so that I could see my other objects. I'm going to zoom out a bit, hold down the space bar to reposition. You can see that I'm going to hold down Control or Command to quick select my last selection tool. I can move this outside of my artboard. So remember, I'm going to zoom out, all of this space to work with. When it comes time to saving, it'll save everything, but when it comes time to outputting, you could either tell Illustrator to output everything on your workspace or only within your artboard. So I want you to take a moment and explore these different shapes. Here is my ellipse. If I hold down Shift, it'll create a perfect circle. If I hold down Option or Alt, it will create my circle from the center, from its radius. I can hold down Shift and Option or Shift Alt, and it'll create a perfect circle from the center. You also have your Polygon Tool, where if you click and drag, This one has more options. If you click and drag, don't let go of the mouse button, but use your arrow keys up or down, you could add more sides. So say I want, let's see, this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold down Shift if you want to straighten it. Now you let go of the mouse button first before you let go of your keyboard shortcuts. And with the star tool, the star also has different keyboard shortcuts. Use your arrow keys up or down to reduce how many arms you have, up to add more. So here's 5. You hold down Shift to straighten it, but then hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC so that all the arms are parallel to one another. So there's lots of different keyboard shortcuts. So remember that Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC changes certain options, and Shift also changes some options. But the star also has an additional control. If you hold down on a Mac Command, on a PC Control, and now if you drag out, you can make the arms longer. So you can only manipulate this shape at the creation. So say for example, I'm going to let go, and now I decide, well, I want a sixth arm. Well, you're going to have to recreate that star. At this point, I'm just press up once. Here it has 6 arms. I can hold down Shift to straighten it, Option Alt to make all the arms parallel. I could hold down Command or Control to make the arms longer or smaller. You can invert them. Once I let go of the mouse button, it creates your shape. Lots of different controls for right now. What I want you to do is just have fun and create some basic shapes. This is all that we're going to be doing for this week's information. I do have one more video that's going to go over sharing, and we do have to talk about layers. So for right now, go ahead and start creating your different shapes. Once you created shapes, go ahead and change the colors, change the stroke. I should have mentioned this. I forgot to mention this. Is that for each item, you could always switch out the stroke and the fill color by clicking on this little arrow right here, or the keyboard shortcut Shift X, which allows you to switch these colors around. Say, for example, this is almost looking like a stop sign. What if I want the outside color, the stroke color, to be white? And what if I want the stroke color to have a thicker value? Well, I could increase the stroke value, but also what you could do, you see where it says stroke right here? If I click on this, it opens up the stroke panel, specifically stroke align. Right now it selects to the center. I could have my stroke to be aligned on the inside or to grow on the outside. So you see how it changes your object. So right here, if you want everything to fit within a specific size, I could tell it to add the stroke on the inside. I want you to explore these. On some objects, what you could also do is, I'm going to select this one. You could tell it to only have a fill but no stroke. If you click on the stroke over here in the toolbar, if we click on this little red line where it says none, it gets rid of my stroke. So this one has no stroke value. Looking at this shape right here, I'm just going to scale it up a bit. Instead of this one not having a stroke, if I select the fill, I could always tell this one to not have a fill. Now, if ever you have a shape that does not have a fill, one thing that I want to point out is that this is now empty. So when I try to select it, I actually have to select a portion that we could see, which is right here. And now if I click and move it, you can see that this object it's empty. There is no fill. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind, I'm going to move this one off to the side. It is possible to remove both the fill and the stroke value for any shape, but once we deselect it, it appears that it disappears. In fact, though, because I know it's there, I'm using my selection tool. I'm making what's called a Marquee Selection, where I click and drag. anything within that selection is selected. This one, it just happens that I got rid of the stroke and fill. So I'm going to go ahead and reapply a color. So maybe I want this one to be yellow, and the stroke is, I'm going to go ahead and have this kind of purple, dark purple. Let's increase the value. So we have something that looks like this. So right now we are just creating these fun shapes. Each shape I want you to just go ahead and experiment with them. Now, go ahead, take some time, create some shapes. And a future video, we will talk about layers. There are layers found within Illustrator, but for right now, notice that everything was created within one layer. So if we click on this is our layer panel. If I click on the little arrow next to layer 1, you can see that all the shapes that were created right here are displayed. But within Illustrator, we are able to click and select our individual layers, but we still have the idea of layer order. Whatever object is placed on top has precedence. Like this shape right here, which is kind of like towards the center, there's some objects that it will cover because it was created afterwards. So whenever you create a new shape, it's always placed on the top of that list. Let me go ahead and create another polygon. And if I move this one, notice that this one on my layer, it's placed on top, so it has precedence over everything else. Visual precedence. So we'll be talking more about these different tools as the semester continues. So for right now, I want you to experiment with some of these different shapes, have some fun with it, and just learn how to create these basic shapes. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay.